Alright, so it's time to actually meet those people that that are the fang leader races was talking about, and unfortunately, yeah, they do not like Koreans due to the conflict, so we don't want to have troubles.
Well, what do we have here? Connor fucking Morgan. We heard the Norks
I thought his name was just Connor Morgan.
Keep trying.
It's a
So,
work in
where's the
progress.
chopper?
Wow, his parents were really different, having his middle name be a swear word.
And you choose it.
Hey, help me out here. We're fighting the same
God,
war.
Hey, you know, I'll
everybody in this game
bitch.
flips off at the drop of a feather.
I get what they're trying to do, but it feels like everyone has their notch put to generic asshole.
What did that is on for saying episode 4? Boring conversation anyway.
Anyway, though,
But at least had tried for more than 3 seconds.
I will say this, like, okay, like, Gears of War this story ain't, Halo this story ain't, I dare say not even Call of Duty this story ain't. Mind you, this is not to say that Call of Duty is not at its fair share of stinker stories, but man, even Call of Duty feels more nuanced than, oh, everybody is raging, angry, and an asshole. Like, I get it, these guys don't care for the Koreans, but man, it feels like they literally did this just for the sake of us having another gameplay section than this actually making sense story-wise.
Not to mention, again, they're trying to be having the super more dramatic moment to see guys, even some Americans have lost their way, they're not fighting for their country anymore.
I mean, imagine if that's how we introduced our commentaries. Hello and welcome back to Homefront. I hate you all!
Did you actually write this game?
Also, that's how Hollywood thinks people with Tourette syndrome work.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing about that kind of makes me really. I don't have Tourette's myself, but what makes me sad about I won't go too much of a tangent, but what makes me sad about the Predator is that the director actually has Tourette's himself. So basically, he's making a mockery out of people like himself. How does that even work?
I don't want to touch it anymore, to be honest. But
well, I mean,
you know,
then again, to be fair, his co-writer demonstrated with RoboCop 3 that he has the subtlety of a sledgehammer.
Not to mention this, I would like to remind you, the same director thought it was a good idea to keep on, you know, casting an actual sexual, you know, offender.
Yeah.
And not saying anything to anyone until he got busted out.
Not to mention, the same director also thought he could make PTSD out to be a joke and not just a predator.
Okay, let me explain. Now we're gonna do a bit of a stealth mission. Connor literally produced us a good sniper rifle out of his ass and gave it to us so we can use it to scope the targets that he indicates to us. It's a bit of a scripted section. You still can fuck up, you know, if you don't kill the targets properly, but it's very railroaded. Later on you will actually have a section where you have more freedom of movement when it comes to, you know, choosing your targets, thankfully.
I will say this.
Yeah.
Yes, Dubs?
We don't know how many.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're on the subject of Iron Man 3. God, could you imagine if that's how our commentary of that, when you have me and Shuey on one side, Jover and Tio on the other, we just start talking about the film and all of a sudden one of us just flips out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will say this. I feel like part of the reason we didn't see some of Shane Black's worst stuff with Iron Man 3 is because he was kept on a bit of a leash.
I mean, I'll argue The Nice Guys is a good movie, and he didn't have executive oversight there.
Okay, The Nice Guys is what I call, in this case, something of a fluke, because, and mind you,
and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Okay, let me put it like this. Stuff like Kiss Kiss Came Bang Bang and Nice Guys, those are seen as flukes more so because, well, one, Nice Guys is kind of his one truly good film, and mind you, this is not to say that stuff like Iron Man 3 was even bad, but it clearly did have issues that were definitely of Shane Black stuff. Here's Shane Black's problem. It feels like he felt like he needed to become his character from Predator. You know, that guy who makes really unfunny jokes that only he laughs at. You know, I mean, it was.
Killed first.
I mean, it was fine for the movie, but it feels like he became that character because most of his jokes ain't funny, and they can get pretty dang offensive. Like, I get that he has a certain style here and there, but no, you gotta know when to put a cork on it. And he clearly did not because, well, just look at The Predator. And ever since The Predator, he has still not gotten work. Keep in mind, that is, at the very least, been 4 years from now, which is, that's saying something.
I mean, I actually liked most of the films that I've seen from him, whether he wrote or directed them. I mean, the only ones I can say I didn't really like, aside from the most obvious one, is Last Action Hero. Because that kind of perpetuated to me the problems with a lot of so-called commentaries on types of film. It's like you're not so much commentating on it, it's just what you're doing it straight, but then saying, oh, look how weird this is.
Speaking of somebody who does like Last Action Hero, I definitely attribute more of that film's success to, you know, the charisma of Arnold Schwarzenegger, as opposed to a lot of it being Shane Black's genius script over there.
Oh, this. Also, yeah, these people also have taken some actual North Koreans as prisoners, and were actually subjecting them to all kinds of tortures, because of course they would. Again, if I recall correctly, this story is supposed to be set in Colorado or anything, so I don't know what this is to tell.
Okay. If I am to be honest, if this were like, say, a more modern-made game, there would be a lot to read into, definitely, what the writers are trying to say about how things are getting like this and that. However, taking into account when this game was made, part of me is considering that this is probably just somebody who got, oh, I need to make a script about how war is hell and changes people into monsters. Okay, here you go, and that was pretty much it. Like, I don't think there's some big political undertone to all of this.
Well, remember, Drova, this was handled, at least partially, at least on a consultant's level, I forgot already how much it was involved, by the writer of the original Red Dawn movie. A heavy political movie that talks about how North Korea despises your country.
Wait, hold on. If that's the case, then I mean, okay, maybe his mentality was, okay, I know I portrayed North Korea as the big bad guys, so maybe just to even things out, I should show some Americans butchering people.
In part, I can understand, because the first of The Last of Us also has something similar going on. The idea that in front of an apocalypse, the human mind will not react the same way, and some people, you know, will decide to take an easier approach, even if it makes them become monsters as a result. You know, showcase the fact that harsh times, you know, can potentially take the worst out of us. I can get this, you know, but this definitely could have been handled better. It just comes across as, oh, people in the South are inherently evil and need just a push.
Alright, I can...
Yes, sir.
Just quickly on the Last Action Hero thing. To be fair, Shane Black wasn't the only writer, but yeah, just wanted to make that clear because someone pointed it out.
Of course. I mean, you know, and I still like Last Action Hero. I think it's a good movie. But I can definitely get why that movie did not exactly soar when it first came about. Like, I feel like that was a movie that was a little too early for its own time. And mind you, I don't attribute that as a sign that Shane Black is as good a creator here. Like, let me put it like this. Shane Black gives off the inkling that the times where he gets good reception are times where luck is on his side or he has a very good set deck. The problem is that when he's let loose, for the most part, and mind you, this isn't to say all times, but I'll just say this, he has shown that he is better off not trusted to be let off on a leash. This isn't to say that he can't make a good one, but as stuff like The Predator and a lot of his other not-so-great stuff has shown, it's kind of like playing on the slots at a roulette casino here and there. You might hit the jackpot, but you've also got a pretty big chance that you're gonna leave kind of disappointed, to say the least. And I know what some people may say, well, isn't just about any project a gamble? Like, no, Shane Black is a pretty bad gamble.
And as for the, speaking of writers on the subject of this game, Theo mentioned that one of the writers, John Milius, was a writer on the original Red Dawn movie. He was also involved to an extent on Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, so the guy knows how to do a good political commentary about the horrors that, that conditioning in an exclusive environment gives to us.
Okay, I do have a bit of a theory here. Tio, remind me, when was this game made?
2010, 2011.
Okay, so this was... Okay, video game stories were definitely much better at this point in time than they were in, say, the PlayStation or, heck, even the PS2 era. I do have to wonder if maybe this was a case of the writer not adapting well to making a video game script. Because, okay, if I'm to be honest, the quality of the script of this game feels very lax in comparison to other video games that came out around the time. And I do wonder if maybe this was just the mentality of a film script writer definitely not translating well to a video game.
Also, like I said, the game clearly showcased the fact that the campaign was kind of attacked on, and the main focus was the multiplayer to begin with.
So maybe the writer got
not that long to begin with.
So maybe the writer got rushed as well, because okay, like let me
mine back in 2012. Apparently, it was purported that John Milius apparently didn't even write a single word of the game.
No, I think correctly, was at least a consultant of some kind. So,
okay. Regardless, though, I'm just going to say this: I'm not going to pass final judgment on the game story yet, but yeah, I don't think this game was going to...
most of it, I can tell you that.
Okay, I'm just gonna say this. I'm not surprised if this game did not exactly win any awards for writing, because...
And again, THQ, the old THQ, as I mentioned in the first part, was already in kind of deep trouble at this point, and they were kind of banking on this to become their Call of Duty. But unfortunately, because of stuff like, again, what you just said about the single-player mode, it did not help things out and led eventually to their bankruptcy.
So here's my take on all of this here. This story reads like a rush job. Now, like, so unlike, say, something like Last of Us 2, I'm not ready to call malice out on the story and how it portrays some of the more offensive acts here. I just wonder if this is just about him going through a checklist of, okay, show how war is hell, show how the Koreans are oppressing, show how some Americans have devolved to bestial status and yada yada yada, they're butchering people and you gotta fight them. Cause like, again, mind you, it's not good writing, but it doesn't feel like the story is... Well, okay, it does feel like the story is beating us over the head with it, but not in the sense where, oh, it absolutely wants you to realize how terrible you and humanity are. It's more like just, well, this is what I got paid for, so I'll just crank it up to 11, and bam.
I think there's a good analogy... Oh, Jesus. There's a good analogy, potentially, that someone did... I forgot who actually did it, but if I recall correctly, someone tried to compare some particular movie plots of done recent times. It was a stupid critiques, mind you, but I think it's applicable for a plot of a game like this. Compared it to a theme park. Rather than having a proper structure, instead it's kind of a linear going point-to-point kind of scenario that characters go to this place, they see what it is, the goods and the bads, and move on to the next particular set piece. That in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, you know. A game like Final Fantasy VII, for example, follows this formula technically, even with the open world map when you get down to it, at least for its first half, and it works perfectly fine for what it needs to do. Or stuff like we observed with the Gears of War franchise, you know. But this is following it to such a bland degree. The character, your queen character, which mind you has no personality to speak of, you know, and the posse are going from place to place, seeing the horrors that North Korea subjected America to, with only a passing, you know, observation and saying, oh, this is a thing that's happening, we need to pass through this, and then moving on.
I think the best way to sum it up, this game paradoxically goes over the top while also simultaneously feeling like it's going through the motions at the same time. It's paradoxical, but that's what it feels like. It's like
it's both half-assed and full-assed somehow.
like, okay, it's almost like, and yeah, I get it, but bear with me here. It's like literally everyone, like even the designers, have literally just a script that says bad stuff happened here, so they go, okay, and they put in all the bad stuff here and there, and lather, rinse, and repeat. And mind you, I get it. The story was clearly not the main focus here. However, the campaign is what we're commentating on, so we critique it as such here.
I couldn't, like, I think I mentioned in one of the previous parts, I couldn't even actually try the multiplayer because, of course, the server had been shut down.
And honestly, all the more reason why the campaign should be good, because, you know, when stuff like, you know, servers shut down and the multiplayer isn't there, the campaign is all you have left. And yes, I know that the producer mindset of these games was clearly not always thinking for the future in that regard, but all the same, if anything nowadays, it's all the more important for these games to have good single-player campaigns.
This is why the original trilogies of both Halo and Gears managed to stand out, because outside of the multiplayer, which was actually, you know, appreciated by the fans, they did add solid stories that, you know, get remembered.
And I know some people would say, oh, but don't Halo and Gears of War technically even keep their older games as servers open? Yes, true, they do. However, a lot of the reason that those games are remembered fondly is due to their gameplay and memorable campaigns. Like, let me put it like this. Unless it's about how bad some of their recent adventures have been, you're more likely to hear video essays about the stories, atmosphere, and you know, all that jazz single-player stuff about Halo or Gears of War than you will about, say, their multiplayer stuff. Now, this is not to say that reviews should not cover that, mind you. They are still important sections here and there. But they're only a component here, and the solo campaign is what gets a lot of players into the gamer mentality for those games on the whole.
Okay, for what you said, Drova, it's applicable to Gears. Halo is a bit more tricky because it literally pioneered a lot of the stuff for the FPS genre, particularly for its multiplayer. So it is important to remember, because it's kind of a cornerstone of the FPS genre that cannot necessarily be ignored when scrutinizing its games. Like, I get what you mean, but I think it's applicable what you said only for Gears.
Okay, let me reiterate. When it came to Halo, yes, it does pioneer a lot of stuff in multiplayer. However, what drew those people initially to the game was the single-player campaign. Now, my point is this, like, mainly, specifically for our commentaries, what we're tackling is the single-player campaign. Now, in some situations where we can, we likely, you know, would handle some of the multiplayer aspects here and there. But my point is about how important it is for a game, yes, even a multiplayer one, to remember that its single-player campaign, or content in general, should be up to snuff, especially when, you know, say the servers do eventually go out.
That's like how me and I had Grips help me showcase how the Gears of War 3 multiplayer servers work really well, whereas when we tried to do the same thing for Gears 5,
it didn't work.
Yeah, so that's kind of
also
the lag was baffling. Okay. To elaborate, I was playing it through the Series S, and I think Pedro was playing it through his Xbox One.
Yes.
Anyway, I am still at to try them properly because I only started the first one, but I probably had to restart it because it's been a while since I actually just dropped it because of time constraints. But I've also been told that overall the story of the Killzone series, that the game that Guerrilla did before Horizon, the Horizon games, also was solid enough to be talked about. Not as much as Halo or Gears, but it was solid enough to stand on its own.
Sure.
Area's clear. Keep moving.
Not, and by the way, that's the thing, Dwebs. Even if you wanted to make that argument, but don't you see, Pedro, you were playing on the Series S. Sorry, this was playing on the Series S, and you were playing on the Xbox One. So there's a problem with playing crossplay between those two consoles. I don't see why, because when me and Theo tried playing the Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer mode, he was on his PS4, his base PS4, whereas I was playing on my PS5, and now we had zero problems. So
Oh my
well,
god,
this
they
after
literally
the,
strapped.
Yeah, one to a target, yes.
To bring things back to this game, Tio,
Yeah.
do we at least know how good the multiplayer of this game was?
I mentioned that in the previous parts, but again, according to both reviews and the people who actually played the game, it seems that it was very fun. Like, and there are stuff that I forgot if I didn't mention in the previous part or not, but just in case, there is stuff that they don't show you that you can do in this campaign, that it's kind of baffling to me because it would have been so fun to actually try it, and it kind of showcased the fact that it was tacked on and rushed. But in multiplayer, you can command the drones to fight the enemy. They kind of do take advantage of a futuristic angle. In the campaign, as you have seen, like the automatic turrets and the Goliath, the drone that you can pilot in order to attack targets.
That's actually a good
But in
point,
multiplayer,
honestly.
you can control mini drones, both on land and a flying one, if you can, which does help out making the game stand out a bit more. Remember, this was before Call of Duty was trying to also go for a more futuristic kind of setting. So this game was kind of ahead of the curve on that front.
I think I can get why this game did not exactly save THQ like they were hoping, though. Don't get me, okay, so from what I understand, it sounds like the best content for this game was in the multiplayer. Mind you, and I know, there are a lot of people who will buy a game just for its multiplayer. However, there are arguably just as many people who enjoy a game for its single-player content here and there. Like, I feel like if they wanted this game to be the big blockbuster thing to save them, having a better single-player campaign would have possibly have added on more sales, like, enough to salvage them. Mind you, again, I'm not gonna act like single player is always the be-all, end-all here, but again, they wanted this game to be the biggest seller, the thing that would save them. I feel like they really needed to put more into this than they actually did. And yeah, I get it, you know, why they had to rush here and there, but that really kind of speaks to some of the futility of the situation on their part.
Yeah, I mean, I get that Jason Rubin, who was in charge of THQ around 2012, did his best, did all he could to try and save the company, but in the end, all the stuff that was going on was just completely out of his hands by that point. So the most he could do was at least put the company's most valuable assets up for sale, so at the very least the franchises that were involved in it would end up in litigation hell.
That was actually a smart move on the long run, because instead of having everything being sold to block of someone like EA or Activision, God help us if that actually happened, you know, most of the assets were equally, you know, auctioned. We had still some bizarre stuff, like Sega of all people got a couple of the stuff like Endless, Homeward, for example.
And Relic.
It's funny
and the
because
Relic everything like Dawn of War.
it's funny because a lot of these assets would later be bought back up by THQ Nordic, which I know.
The Embracer Group in general, because that includes Deep Silver, the other guys
Yeah.
who also bought a bunch of the IPs from.
Yeah, because that was an interesting thing. Nordic Games, as they were back then, just basically bought some of the more valuable well-known stuff, including the name THQ, and basically just wore its skin.
Yeah, and at the time of the acquisition, I was like, because the company literally did not have much to go on aside from some old titles, like, what the fuck are they going to do? Like, it feels like a waste. But to be fair, on the long run, they've proved, the Embracer Group as a whole has proven that they can try to actually bring some life into the stuff they acquired. Again, they work mostly on a AA budget, and also this music.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say this music.
Is this an episode of a Spider-Man 90s animated series?
Like, I mean, I guess.
Okay. I will say that is an insult to the 90s Spider-Man cartoon music.
I will say this though, like, props to the composer here. He is clearly trying something.
I think the next part will actually have my favorite piece of music anyway, but go on, Dibs.
Okay, because that one at least has music that fits what's going on, and has some pretty good themes in and of itself. Like obviously the main Spider-Man theme, but also the themes for like Mary Jane, for example.
Honestly, to me, this sounds like... Honestly, this music sounds like something out of Resident Evil Code Veronica.
And the funniest thing is that the same guys who did the music for the 90s Spider-Man, the Saban lot, and they went on to do the music for Digimon. So... But, hey, I like Digimon stuff.
But again, the previous group is that they work on a AA budget, so they take time to do stuff, and unfortunately the finished product will not be on par with major releases, and will probably need patches to actually, you know, be properly more optimized. Even some of the original IPs that they developed by like Biomutant in recent times, but there you can tell that there's a genuine, you know, heart to put into that.
Although,
sorry, go on with
no, you finish first.
The Deep Silver branch notwithstanding much, because unfortunately they seem to be a bit more not necessarily cheap, but not caring much, as evidenced by stuff like the more recent Saints Row reboot, for example.
Oh,
okay. On the subject of THQ Nordic Axter, I gotta ask, they haven't really.
Hey there.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. They haven't. Okay. They haven't really been showing off a whole lot of their AEW game.
Actually, they just had, by the time of this recording, they actually did add like a direct style presentation a couple of weeks ago. They announced actually a new Alone in the Dark reboot. I think that they acquired a couple. They're basically turning it to similar to stuff like The Evil Within or the Resident Evil recent remakes, which on one hand, sure, as long as it works, but Alone in the Dark was born as a point-and-click game with some very minor action components. They bring into more action-oriented, feels more of a stake, but as long as the game works, sure, I guess.
How does the AEW game look?
Well, so far it looks fine, but hold on, give me a second. Now you need to choose again the targets in the sequence that the game tells you. After that, you'll be able to pick and choose a bit more.
So, I really kind of have to wonder. Let's assume that this game was made with better care for a better single player, you know, better production values in that regard. Do you think maybe in that case, this could have been the game that fulfilled THQ's wishes?
Possibly, I suppose. You have to remember that at the time, however, you're so cool, Connor. At the time, this was the time where both COD and Battlefield were still very prevalent, you know, in the gaming market. So the competition was fierce to begin with.
To be fair, there were a lot of people who were definitely making big buck off of the trend as well. Hence the complaint about the oversaturation of first-person shooters and whatnot.
Yeah.
Mind you, though. So, let's assume this is a universe where this game sold enough to save THQ. How do you think they would have carried on from there in that regard?
well, making more sequels to that. That's as easy as it gets.
Imagine the Homefront franchise.
At the time, they were also banking on what possibly is my favorite IP that they had back then, Darksiders, and they were kind of building up to a proper, constructed series because they just released 2, which, if I recall correctly, had sold well enough, but it had costed a lot to make because they wanted to have it bigger in scope and everything.
Put him down when he's behind the red truck.
Trying to give me a second. So I don't know. Eventually, Nordic is fulfilling that kind of dream, but Joe Madureira kind of dropped out of the project. It's a bit of a shame.
This motherfucker.
Plus,
For those who don't know, Joe Madureira was basically the main character design, main person behind comic book artists from the 90s, worked for Image Comics, and that should tell you what his kind of aesthetics are, but it's amazing because of that.
And hey, we're getting a new Time Splitters game from the same people that made the older games.
Yeah, again, I think we mentioned it, but just in case, yes, as we were hinting also in the Haze commentary, the original developers for that series finally can get their happy ending in some fashion.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see how it turns out. I think it's still Deep Silver, however, the publishers, so there can be actual concern,
And,
unfortunately.
Okay.
Heads, fingers crossed.
We're going through.
Connor, not again! Jacob! Jacob!
RPG! The church is collapsing. Get out of there.
You're gonna have to jump!
I cannot move. Help. Jump slow.
Oh, jump.
Yeah.
Rihanna's head toe.
Again, the game actually allowed you to pick some extra targets on your own before telling you to just jump down and get on the action because you need to get to the chopper.
Wow, I gotta say, props to Rihanna. She dropped her singing career to fight for the greater cause. That's
Like in Battleship?
Rihanna wasn't even in the Battleship video game.
But she was in the movie.
Yeah, okay, I'm not too fond of her songs in the first place, and seeing her acting, yes, I know Battleship had a bad script, but everyone else in that gave a decent performance, so why didn't she?
You mean the movie, because she wasn't in the game, but okay. I do wonder about Taylor Kitz's performance. However, I will say this. I have seen a movie that finally shows me that Taylor Kitsch can act properly. 21 Bridges.
Okay.
Basically, 21 Bridges is a hard cop story starring Chadwick Boseman.
Huh.
It's actually a pretty good one. Has a good cast. Chadwick Boseman, J.K. Simmons.
Of course, there's J.K. Simmons. Like, J.K. Simmons is on actually a lot of police related stuff.
And I mean, hell, for all the Battleship thing, for all his complete inexperience with acting, that guy who played that guy who had his legs blown off by an IED in real life, who played basically a fictionalized version of himself in Battleship. Even he acted better than Rihanna.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, time to abandon the rednecks and actually get to greener pastures.
The rednecks were assholes, to be fair.
Okay,
we now need to follow the trucks that we planted the tracker on, so we can actually hijack them and actually detour them towards what remains of the U.S. military, so they can gain an advantage.
I will say this about the music: it definitely seems to be getting better, question mark? Like, yeah. Okay, at the start it was generic, but at least now you could probably still call it generic, but at least it feels more engaging. Maybe this level is just a fluke, or maybe it'll continue, hopefully.
Well, we'll see, because in the next part we're actually going to performed the hijacking. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
The jacking never stops.